Heyo, John Lee Dumas here of Entrepreneur on Fire, the #1 business podcast, and you are listening to the How to Quit Working show by Jeff Steinman, where you'll hear insights, stories, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs who quit their job and started a business. Prepare to ignite.
This is the How to Quit Working show. Jeff Steinman believes entrepreneurship is the only true path to freedom. That's why he created the How to Quit Working show, where you'll hear stories, insights, and inspiration from lifestyle fanatics who left their soul-sucking 9-to-5 job forever. Now, here's your host, author, entrepreneur, and ultimate lifestyle fanatic, Jeff Steinman.
Hello and welcome to the How to Quit Working show. Today we're going to focus on a really important topic along the lines of quitting your job and starting a business, well, kind of like we do all the time. But today in particular, we're going to talk about fear. Fear is definitely the #1 thing that stops people from doing all of the things that they want to do and all of the things that will create the most amazing life that they could possibly imagine, which most people by far, like vastly by far, do not live a life that is everything that it could be and everything that they want it to be and everything that they deserve. So we're going to talk about that for the entire show. Heather's going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it as well. I've got a couple of anecdotes from when I was in my transition that I want to share as well. Before we jump into that, I want to remind you that we have the How to Quit Working group on Facebook, and that you can get to that at howtoquitworking.com/group. And then that will send you over to Facebook, where you will just be able to click join group, and then you will approve your request right away. And then you will be right in there. And don't worry, nobody in the entire world, except for the people in the group, will know that you have joined a group on Facebook called How to Quit Working, because I know you might not want your boss to see that, and that's understandable. So we did check all the settings, and we did even test this with a couple of folks in the group. And when you join the group and when you post in the group, nobody can see that, and nobody knows anything about that except the people that are in the group. So don't worry about confidentiality. It's completely confidential, everything that is in there. So don't let that stop you. Go to howtoquitworking.com/group and get access to a group of freedom fanatics just like yourself who want the exact same things out of life that you want. Don't miss this opportunity. It's a great place to go, great place to have great conversation with great people just like yourself who want the same things out of life. So howtoquitworking.com/group. Now, I want to do things a little bit differently on today's show. Normally we do Heather's segment towards the end. I want to do it at the beginning today because I want to listen to what Heather has to say about fear, and then I want to expand and add my own thoughts onto that as well. So without any further ado, Heather, take it away. Tell us all about fear.
Hello, Freedom Fanatics. This is Heather Osgood, and I'm so pleased to be with you today. I hope that you're all doing well. Today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about fear. I don't know how many of you have the pleasure of being in our Facebook circle, but there's been a lot of talk about fear in that group lately. And I was just thinking about kind of what propels people and the direction that they take and the choices they make. And one of the big deterrents that people really face is fear. And according to WashingtonPost.com, there's a very common list of 10 top fears. Of course, the #1 fear is the fear of public speaking, followed closely by a fear of heights. And then there's bugs and snakes that people are really afraid of, claustrophobia, flying, kind of all of the typical fears that you might imagine are out there. My favorite on this list is a fear of zombies. And you have to actually believe in zombies, I would guess, to have a fear of zombies. And I just thought that was hilarious because I don't know how many of you have a fear of zombies, but that's not ever something that's been on my radar as a fear. But people do have really deep-seated fears, and these fears really propel them in different directions, whether it's a positive direction or a negative direction. It really is kind of the foundation of what stops you sometimes from taking real action. And so I wanted just to talk about fear and how we can overcome fear. So the first step in overcoming fear is just to face your fears. And facing fears can be a really, really difficult thing to do. And I have to say, take it from me, I am an expert on fears because I have had many fears in my life, as I'm sure that most of you have. One of my favorite stories about overcoming fears happened at a ropes course that I did. I have a big fear of heights, as I'm guessing many of you do, according to the WashingtonPost.com article, because it's the number 2 greatest fear, at least in America, is heights. So my business coach had recommended that my partner and I go and do this ropes course. And I had no interest in doing a ropes course. I knew that it was going to involve being up high, and I didn't want to be up high. And so I was very against the idea, but I don't really like to tell people about my fears. So I decided to go along with the idea anyways. So we show up at this ropes course, and of course we start with kind of some benign, like pretty easy little mellow activities. And I'm thinking, okay, this is fine. This is fun. And then they walk us up to these massive telephone poles. And I want to say they were probably like 50 feet in the air. They were really high up there. And the whole concept of this challenge was that there were 2 telephone poles, and in between the telephone poles, there were 2 wires. So there was a lower wire for your feet and an upper wire for your hands. So you had to climb up this telephone pole while your partner climbed up the other telephone pole. So you're both at opposite ends, and then you have to traverse this wire, and you have to go from one telephone pole to the next. And you're not going by yourself, you're going at the same time that your partner is going. So mid-air, 50 feet up, you're going to meet this person on these 2 wires, one for your feet and one for your hands, and you had to cross bodies, so cross over this person to get to the other side. And it was pretty terrifying, I have to say, but we did it. And it was a huge accomplishment. And I really felt like I faced my fears, that I really, I went out there and I did it. And at the end of it, it was such an amazing feeling. One of the things that I learned about myself was that when we got there, my business partner, who I thought was going to be totally comfortable and just chill and good with the whole thing, turned out to be really more afraid than I was. And so through the process of really coaching her through getting up the pole and really finding the strength within herself to do it, I realized that eased my fears. And so it was a really great experience. And it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about our business and our working relationship. And it really did teach me a lot about facing my fears. And in my life, I have found that anytime I face my fears subside. And anytime I don't face my fears, they just become bigger than life. They kind of float around in your brain. They float around in your subconscious. And suddenly you have this fear that really has become larger than life, because it just takes on almost like a persona, or, a physical being that it feels very insurmountable. So I have found that just facing that fear head on really does help subside that fear. The next thing that you have to really look at is really fear is just a habit. You get in a habit of having a fear. I think about my son, who's now 18, and I think about, just his food choices. So every child is going to be picky at some point about the foods that they do or don't like to eat. And he really has been a relatively good eater. I wouldn't say he's particularly picky necessarily, but it's been really interesting because he's coming into adulthood, and now he's starting to taste these different foods that for his whole life he's thought that he didn't like. And I can think back to a particular experience where he's always really disliked beans, and I decided just to go ahead and put some beans on his plate one night, and he ate them, and he was like, oh my gosh, these really aren't so bad after all. I kind of like them. But he had built up in his mind that he really hated beans. And so it had just become part of who he was. And he realized that actually eating them and trying them again, that he liked them, that they weren't so bad. And it's the same thing with our fears. We always assume that we have this fear and that it's there and it's going to stay there, and it's something we don't like. We don't like heights. We don't like flying. We don't like public speaking. We're afraid of this, or we're afraid of that. We're afraid of a spider. But the reality is oftentimes when we face that fear and when we try to break the habit of having that fear, we realize that the fear isn't as big as we thought it was to start with. And so really trying to get out of that habit, and our brain is going to just automatically go there. When you get in a place where you're surrounded by that fear, you're going to go to that place. You're going to know that, oh, that's something I'm afraid of. I can't do that. And that's what pops into your mind. You think, I can't do that. I'm afraid of that. Or you avoid it because it's a pain point, and no one likes to be around pain. So you're avoiding that pain point. You're avoiding that fear. So really trying to get out of the habit and trying to change your thinking. When you think, I'm afraid of that, reframe that thought. Instead of thinking, I'm afraid of that, discover what maybe that thought means to you. Why are you afraid of it? Or what would it be like to not be afraid of that? So really kind of analyze that practice of constantly turning to fear around those specific items that you're fearful of. The next thing that's really important when you're thinking about fear is that the opposite of fear is faith. Having a deep faith that something positive is going to happen instead of something negative happening. So I live in California. I live on the beach. I'm not in the snow very often. It never snows at my house ever. And if we get a really bad rainstorm, that's kind of living on the edge for weather as far as I'm concerned. So recently we were up in the mountains and we were there for a week, and we were hoping that it would snow because it would be fun. I was really hoping there would be snow there so we could drive to the snow and play in it and then drive home. Well, just as we're getting ready to leave, probably about 10 hours before we left, it started snowing. And so suddenly I get this fear that just totally is crippling me, that I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to have to drive home in the snow. And I'm not like a huge lover of driving, period. And then adding snow on top of it doesn't really make me real happy. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. We're going to have to drive home in the snow. We're going to get in a car accident. We're going to do who knows what. I know that there are millions of people around the world who drive in the snow every day, but obviously fears are not rational. And this was not a rational fear that I was having. However, it was a really great experience for me because I automatically went to that place of fear in my mind. I automatically thought, this isn't something I want to do. I don't want to drive in the snow. Well, I thought back to my purpose in life, and I believe that I was placed on this planet for a reason. I have a purpose, and I have an obligation to fulfill that purpose. I haven't fulfilled my purpose yet here on earth. And so I believe that I am meant to stay here on earth, that it's my time to be here right now. And so I was able to go to this place of greater faith to say, I have this fear, but my faith is greater than my fear. My faith is that I have a purpose and that I have a place and that I'm going to make it through this awful car ride through the snow back to my home at the beach. And the reality at the end of the day was that the drive was wonderful. The snow was beautiful. It was a great experience. It wasn't crowded. It wasn't icy. It was just really a lot of fun. And so I had projected all of these fears on this experience that turned out not to be fearful, not to be a fearful event or a fearful experience for me. And so it's really important when you think about where these fears are coming from to have that greater faith, to have that belief in the fact that something positive is just as likely to happen to you, if not more likely to happen to you than this fear that you have. So really consider that. The next thing that's really important to think about is that most people have this idea that they want security in their lives. And really, all security wanting or that seeking for security is really based in fear, because the only reason you want security is because you're afraid of insecurity. And when you're thinking about starting a business, you really have to examine this idea of where is that fear coming from? And in most cases, that fear is coming from this place that you really want security. You really want to know that you've got that steady paycheck coming in, that you've got those benefits, that that you have that kind of calculated, reasonable day in and day out life, that your expectations are going to be met. And you know that when you have a job, that everything is going to be status quo, that you're going to kind of just plod through life and you're going to really get there, or you're just going to be where you're at, but it's going to be secure. And when you're thinking about stretching outside of your comfort zone, when you're thinking about growing, you're going to have fears that you have to face. It's just part of the process. But what's so cool about it is it's really expanding you as a human being. And there's a great book by Tony Robbins called Awaken the Giant Within. If you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. He has a really wonderful quote in the book, and I wanted to share it with you. All too often, the security of a mediocre present is more comfortable than the adventure of trying to be more in the future. And that's really what it all boils down to. So if you're thinking about starting a business, but you're just so afraid, you're really crippled by this idea that you would prefer to have a mediocre life, that you would prefer to stay in the status quo, as opposed to reach out and have that adventure, for really the idea that you could have a much more fulfilling future. And it's really important to consider the idea that taking action today is going to allow your tomorrow to be very different. If you keep your status quo, if you keep in the position you're in today, that's where you're going to be tomorrow as well. There isn't going to be a lot of growth for you. And there are some wonderful jobs out there. I'm not saying that you couldn't grow and you couldn't prosper in a career in a corporate environment. You can. But if you're listening to this video right now, if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're not happy where you're at. You're feeling like you're in a really mediocre kind of place in life, and you're wanting to break out. You're wanting to start your own business. And really going out and facing that fear. Things aren't going to be the same. If you quit your job, life will be different. I can assure you it will be different. But will it be better or will it be worse? And at the end of the day, that's a question that really only you have the capability of answering. I believe that it'll be better. And the reason I believe it'll be better is because it allows you to have your own creativity. It allows you to have your own space, your own freedom, your own really opportunity to navigate your ship, to be the captain of your life. And when you're working for someone else, they're in charge. They're the ones that are really the captain of your ship. So abandoning this idea of having that constant, continuous paycheck, or having the consistency of having a job for the adventure and the excitement of starting your own business is really a future that is the right future for me. And I hope it's the right future for you as well. And each of us has to make that decision at the end of the day. What's going to be better for us? Is it better for us to stay in a very secure environment, or is it better for us to step out and kind of embrace the idea of fear, step toward the fear, and make sure that as you're stepping toward that fear, that you have a really great plan in place, that you have your research completed, that you've done some focus groups, that you have a really good business plan written, that you have a really good financial projection. So it's not as though you're stepping out into this abyss of total unknown. You've really put a lot of work and effort into it, and you know that this business opportunity has the chance to really be very productive for you, both financially and psychologically, and just for your entire environment and your living experience. And so today I want to try to inspire you that if you're feeling like you're just saddled down with the weight of fear, to just try to abandon that. Try to abandon the habit of fear. Try not to let yourself go there. Try not to be controlled by fear, and try to kind of just lean into the process. lean into that fear and see where it takes you. I bet that you can accomplish a whole lot more than you're giving yourself credit for. So go out there and just really face those fears and take the action that you need to take today to make sure that your tomorrow is different. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
What a great commentary on fear from Heather Osgood. Heather Osgood, certified How to Quit Working coach. It got me to thinking about a lot of things as I was listening to that. I thought about, it's funny, she mentions Awakening the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. That's one of the first books that I read when I was stuck in that place of desperation and misery in my corporate job and starting to just explore, are there other options? Is there something else out there that I didn't know? I'm not even sure how. I think I just stumbled across that book in the bookstore. I wasn't really even a huge self-development fan as I am now at the time, but that book also had a very profound impact on me. And in fact, I'm pretty sure I had the audiobook. So again, that's another great way to move yourself forward, particularly if you have a commute to your job. I think it's such a great way to transition yourself from the mentality of working for someone else to working for yourself, is using that commute time to put the right positive things into your head. And Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins is one that I listen to a lot in the car. But one of the things that I've found about fear is, just as Heather was saying about facing your fear and that great anecdote she gave about the ropes course, sometimes if you can just do a little thing here and there, little things add up really quickly. And what you find is that, if it's a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 is the thing that you're extremely fearful of, is there a way to just move out to 1 or 2? And then once you've done 2, as Heather said, well, then you're no longer afraid of doing number 2. And then you go out to maybe number 3 or number 4, and you do that. And then that doesn't seem it's a little scary at first. It's not as scary as leaping all the way to 10, but it is a step in the right direction. And then you kind of go out to 6, and then you go out to 7, and maybe you go to 9. And then before you know it, you're out there at 10. You're saying, all right, well, that was a piece of cake. What's next? And also understanding that, we're fearful so often ultimately of failure, as Heather said. But what's wrong with failure? One of my favorite quotes for all time from the How to Quit Working show is from Debbie Travis, when she said, failure is just part of the process. So why would you worry about it? Just realize it's part of the process. It's going to happen, and you're going to move on. And all successful people fail. There's no question about it. All successful people fail. They all pick up, they all move themselves on, and they all move on and do bigger and better things. That's why we call them successful people. It is part of the process. And the fear is the fear of failure. It's the fear of rejection, I think, is another one that is really big, right? It's that fear of and I still struggle with this on a daily basis, and it's the fear that you're going to go out there, you're going to tell somebody about something that you're doing, and they're going to say that it's a bad idea, or that they don't agree with it, or that it's not good, or it's offensive, or it's dumb, or whatever it is that they may say. It's that fear that you're not going to be accepted by the people that you're talking to. And, that's one that is also a struggle to get past. And I want to share something that happened a while back with me that I think is really funny. And it was, I can't even remember what it was. It was something that I had written somewhere, or somebody I'd spoken somewhere. And somebody said, I think it was an article that I'd written online, and somebody said, I don't agree with, there was like a list of 10 bullet points or something, and they said, I don't agree with point number 7. And in my head, I thought, so what? You don't agree? I mean, why are you telling me this? And I think, that's a point, and certainly it's a journey, and I have plenty of progress still to make, and I hope that I continue to evolve in that arena, but it's about reaching a point where you're almost a little bit arrogant about what you do. And there is certainly a necessity to that. And I think one of the things about business that's so important, and this might be a really good topic for an upcoming show, but it's about balancing confidence and knowing that what you have is worth it, is valuable to people, and that people are going to want it, and that it's going to be a good thing for the world, but then also listening to feedback, right? Because you have to be able to have that level of confidence, but you also have to be able to listen, and you can't listen too much and you can't be too confident, right? You've got to balance those things. You've got to balance those two things out against each other. And I think when you reach a point of confidence where you are able to really say, no, this is good stuff. This is something that I have that's valid. And that level of confidence comes from that level of validation that you get. And when you're getting those positive comments, and that's why it's so important to get out there and talk to people, talk about your ideas. Hey, what do you think about this? How much would you pay for that? What do you think about that? What do you struggle with here? How could somebody help you with this? How could I help you with that? And on and on and on. But in order to do that, you got to have confidence. You got to have the confidence to move past the fear of what if they say, no, you know what? I think that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. And people are sometimes even mean about it, and you got to be able to just brush it off and say, all right, well, maybe you're just a jerk. Maybe you've got a really good point. Maybe you don't understand. You got to be able to look beyond all of that. And I think when you start to do that, when you start to just have those little conversations, whether it's with somebody, somebody random that you meet at a restaurant or at a grocery store, your friends, your coworkers, your family, whoever it may be, when you start to have those little conversations, that's that whole thing about moving from 0 to 10, right? So it's that if jumping out to 10, right? If, talking to a large group of people, maybe a public speaking kind of a situation is really scary for you, well, then just start by having those little conversations and moving yourself forward a little bit at a time with a little bit here and a little bit there. I remember one of the things that I really remember this very specifically when I was beginning to get serious about putting my business together. I began by taking these really relatively small steps. And a couple of the things that I remember forming an LLC. I had a lawyer create an LLC. It was a very small amount of money. It was, just because you have an LLC doesn't mean you have to do anything with it, right? So there wasn't a lot of commitment level there. But I was still spending money. I was still taking a step that was moving my business forward. And that felt really, really good. And then I think one of the next things that I did was I invested in some training. I think it was like a group program that I joined, and it was a very sizable amount of money for me. I think I spent like $2,000 on this thing, and certainly I learned a lot, and I got a ton out of the program, and I have no regrets, and I'm really glad that I did that, because that for me that represented the kind of the first big step, the first step of, okay, now I have really literally put my money where my mouth is. And that felt really good. And it really moved me in the right direction towards actually finally making some progress on my business. So that was a really, really good thing. So I encourage you to figure out what, when you look at that scale of 0 to 10, what is that 10 thing that's completely terrifying? And then what are some 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s that you can do that will get you there, right? So if just quitting your job tomorrow is scary to you, and, depending on where you are, that is probably legitimately scary. But if you're in that situation, think about what's a 1Z, a 2Z, 3Z, 4Z kind of a thing that you can do that will move you forward. And one of the things that I think is a way to really, I hate to use cliches, but this one just works really well, but just put your money where your mouth is to get some help and to join a coaching program or get some training, or do something that you're taking the resources that you gain from your job, your money, and you are putting it and investing it in your future, investing it in the future of your business. And that is a way to really cement it in and really ensure that you're moving in the right direction and ensure that you're putting your resources towards the right thing. Because as we know, you can put those resources towards all kinds of things. You can put it towards alcohol. You could just drink, right? You could eat out a lot. You can spend it on frivolous things. You can spend it on entertainment. You can buy toys and things like that. But if you're really serious, take some of that money and put it towards something that will move your business forward. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And we have in How to Quit Working, we now have How to Quit Working coaching. So if the advice that you get from Heather, if these things that we talk about on the show are helpful, and you'd like to have someone to hold your hand through the whole process and guide you through those steps, guide you from step 0 to 10, to that scary step of finally quitting your job and relying on yourself to support yourself, then go over to howtoquitworking.com/coaching and get more information about How to Quit Working coaching and see if that's something that might work for you. Because I think that we have a really solid product there. We have a really solid system, and we have a very, very solid and experienced coach to guide you through the entire way. So go to howtoquitworking.com/coaching, see if that's a fit for you. And I will talk to you on Monday. Now, speaking of really big and exciting things, on Monday, we are going to be making a big announcement about something additional that we're bringing to How to Quit Working, a new way that we have to help you quit working. And I hope you will tune in for that, because it's very cool, very exciting. We've been working very hard on this, and I look forward to bringing you yet another option to quit your job and start a business. Until then.
Thanks for joining us on the How to Quit Working show. Tune in next time when we'll talk to another amazing person just like you, who is now living the ultimate life of freedom and doing it on their terms. If you want to learn how to quit working and get these episodes delivered directly to you, visit howtoquitworkingshow.com.